Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Filmocracy podcast. We are so excited today because we're joined by Ryan Connolly from Film Riot. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
We are like legitimately excited because sometimes we have guests and they're like people that
Usually you're just saying it.
I mean, kind of. There's people we're all in the independent film side, and some people are kind of known, but most people are not really well known, and they're important, but nobody knows who they are. But you are like an actual figurehead, at least in my perspective. So thank you so
Well,
much for
thank you.
joining us today.
Oh, thank you. It's a heck of an intro. I'll take it.
Well, I mean, I think I have the history to back it up because we actually did a video about you in 2020, kind of chronicling. We called it Filmocracy Chronicles, and we talked about your early start and how you sort of trailblazed all of this stuff in like the mid 2000s. Is that what it's called? The 2010s ish.
Yeah.
Um, and that was before there was much information out there and much education out there. Now there's like whatever you type, you'll find some
Yeah.
video teaching you how to do it.
For sure.
But you were really there for a lot of the filmmakers that are out there now that are mid-career and starting to find their footing. And I mean that must be really gratifying for you.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. We started in Florida and then we moved to Texas, so we've always been sort of outside the inner circle of what's goings ons in the film community. Kind of our own bubble, making and doing our own thing for the most part. Of course, we branch out and collaborate, and we show all that on the show. Plenty, lots of friends in LA and New York, and even ones that we work with a lot. But on the norm, we're in our studio, which is where it is, doing our thing. So you just don't really think about that stuff so much. So it's really cool when someone like yourself or somebody else working in the industry says something like that, like, oh, I started watching this when I was in high school, now I'm a working professional. It's just like, what? Which it mostly blows my mind just at how long we've been doing it now, to where someone was in high school and now they're a proper pro out there making films. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing Filmocracy for a few years now, and then sometimes somebody will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I watched some of your like podcast episodes," and it's always like, I don't know, I just feel like people watch this actually.
Yeah, right. It's like, you did? Someone saw this? Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
weird. It was very weird in the beginning too, when it was like brand new. Like now we live in a whole culture where it's everything's online, and relationships are through this. And but in the beginning it was so brand new for me, like just this concept of I'm putting stuff out and I see this number, these tens of thousands of people that watched it, but it's just a number. You know what I mean? It's like there's no audience that I can look and actually see. And especially when we first started on Revision 3, because there was no comment section like there is on YouTube. So you just put it up and then you'd get these like numbers of views, but there's no proof. There's not even a comment or a like button. I'm like, did they? Was it? So it was very strange in the beginning, especially when we did have like a couple of live events and we met people who did watch the show. It's just so strange. And then they feel like they know you because they watch you, but you don't have the same advantage. It's a very interesting sort of medium.
Yeah, and obviously over your career, the film industry continues to change
Yeah.
as and we've not been doing this for so long. I mean, we've been doing Filmocracy for about 5 years now, but really when we were
Nice.
coming up with this concept and like why we wanted to do it, it was really for people like you and the people that you are servicing with your educational programming and just letting people follow your journey, because that has really been difficult. I used to work in the film sales agent side, so I was buying and selling films, and it would always have to have somebody attached with a big enough budget and like
Yeah.
somebody backing it. But for most of your audience, they never have any of those things, and
Yeah.
it's always been a struggle. And I wonder, like, how do you feel like that might have changed over the past decade or so?
Yeah, I think, you definitely have the movies that have like the star power factor to it that you just have to have in a market where you just have to have that. But I think it's a lot of somewhat old thinking. It kind of, I guess, depends too, because genre, you can do a horror film and everyone can be an unknown, and that's totally going to be fine. And I think if you have something good enough, you can go that direction, and yeah, it's just definitely going to work. The star power obviously has a huge draw. Of course, it does. It's what's used to sell tickets and to sell films, like you're saying. But everything has kind of shifted a little bit to even the point where I've been thinking lately, like, what is celebrity exactly? Down to stuff like we and people like us do on YouTube, or people on TikTok or Instagram that are technically celebrities. And at what number do we call them a celebrity? You have people with X amount of following on this social network or that, and they're not considered a celebrity, but they're known by this many people. So are they actually a celebrity? You know what I mean? So I think that has its own, area that's worth thinking about when you're doing this stuff. Like, what exactly is celebrity, and what is the purpose of utilizing it for the project that I'm doing? Um, to the traditional aspects of it, because I mean, a known face within a known circle is going to do something good or bad to your film. If you get maybe an actor that people don't look favorably upon, or they're only in really bad films, you put them in your film, and that's going to paint your film in a certain light, right? Um, so I mean, even just at the start of that conversation, that's something interesting to think about. But now it's like, what are you even making it for? Are you making it for, the general sales world? Are you going to take it to something like Tribeca and try to sell it? Is this something that's just going online? Is it a feature versus a short? I don't think I've answered the question, because it's a very interesting one, but it's I guess it's one that really just depends what pocket you're talking about specifically, really.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more opportunity out there. Even if you just look at, like, Filmocracy has decided to focus on film festivals, and the number of film festivals that exist now compared to 10 years ago is just like almost exponential, because you have these, I think because there's so much new content being made, you have these film festivals that are generated to support very niche content. So you'll have like
Right.
a pet film festival in Mexico, or like the Jewish sci-fi festival of Atlanta, which is like so, everything is like so specific because they're trying to capture a very particular audience, because they know that if they're trying to be like the next Sundance, that's kind of impossible. But if you want to
Yeah.
capture one captive audience, then focusing like that is very helpful.
Do they seem to be all mostly online festivals only, or is it a lot of in-person festivals?
Now, there's a lot of in-person festivals too. It's
That's
obviously
awesome.
it's been weird over the past 2 years, but
Sure.
we are seeing some online-only film festivals pop up. But there is resistance, obviously, not only from the filmmakers, but from like Film Freeway, for example. If you sign up for Film Freeway as an online festival, then they will not list you publicly. You
Oh
have
wow.
to sign up as a physical festival and then say you have an online component, and that way they'll make you searchable. So there's definitely some resistance there, but it's been a weird couple of years to say the least.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting.
I mean, from the filmmaking standpoint, like, you've obviously made a lot of films over the years. I don't believe you've made a feature yet, but I have to imagine there are people that are kind of like pushing you or asking you or tempting you. How have those conversations gone for you?
Yeah, I have not done a feature yet. Before 2018, for me, it was very much about getting myself to the place where I felt I was ready for the feature. The way that I've always put it on the show is I wanted to be able to, honestly look someone in the eye and say, "Hey, you can bet on me," because any feature, no matter who's making it, is a gamble. But I wanted to be able, to get to a place where I felt very confident and comfortable that, if given the opportunity, the budget, I'm not it's not going to fall apart for a lack of experience. So safeguarding it in that way as much as possible, but also, wanting to have enough notches in the belt to where I can craft a story that I want to craft without, maybe having, feeling like, people are going over my head with stuff. Just not having enough experience to really have my hands fully on the reins as much as possible. And Ballistic was kind of the short film I did in 2018, was kind of like the last one in this 5-year plan I had of different things I wanted to, educate myself with, and so I used that one to try to get my foot in the door, and I was able to get representation, and we pitched a feature version of that for a little bit, and since then I've been in that sort of world, pitching different feature ideas and things like that, and that's just, I mean, it's a very difficult world to break into, regardless. Especially now, it's like, it seems like pitches aren't really selling so much. You really sort of just need a script. Um, but I do film, right? We've always had this, motto of, find a bigger wall, you get a bigger sledgehammer. You just do things, you make things, you go about, figuring it out. So, doing a feature on my own outside of the system is, something that's definitely on the top of my mind and that we've been toying around with. But then it comes into, okay, well, what budget range are we talking about? Because that's going to decide what type of film you can make. And for me, if you've seen any of my short films, you know that the type of stuff I like to make is larger things, grander, bigger scope, lots of visual effects, big set pieces, stuff like that. And that stuff doesn't come cheap. So unfortunately, my brain, even when I'm trying to write as low budget as possible, it just keeps stacking on the budget. So that's been a bit of a barrier for me to get across. So it's, what budget do we want to play in? Okay, what sort of idea do I have that could go in there? And that's been kind of a difficult journey. But then it's, where is the money coming from? You could do something like a Kickstarter, but that has its own, pitfalls to think about. And then, what investor are you, getting into play with? There was this one of the investor that invested in a friend's film, and then they were great, but then they had to put their friends in the movie, and I'm not down for stuff like that. So it's a difficult, sort of land to travel. Been figuring it out little by little, but I've got two more projects out that I'm pitching, and two more that I'm developing that could potentially be things that I do on my own. But more than anything, like everything that we do, it's sort of like, every I feel like every next thing I do, I don't really know how to do it. I'm just figuring it out as I go along, as we all do. So it's kind of in that world right now, with A/B testing things, having conversations, and finding out what the best way to move forward with that first feature is going to be, because it's going to happen eventually. It won't stop until we do. But it's just, what will that look like exactly?
It's so interesting to hear you talk like this because from my perspective, it's like Ryan Connolly should be having people like busting down his door to get stuff made because I mean, we talk a lot. I mean, back in when I was working for a sales and production company, we talk about like risk mitigation and, what are different ways that we can access talent without necessarily having to like pay A-level talent. And so that
Right.
would go towards like, how big of a social media presence does this person have? Are they a known entity in their sector? Like before the Weinstein company went down, the second
Right.
question you were asked when you like signed in and like filled out the form was, "What's your social media imprint?" Which was kind of crazy because Weinstein is such a, kind of like archaic, traditional type of company, but that was even important to them. And you
Yeah.
kind of have that in spades. I mean, especially relative to others, many filmmakers out there who have like zero presence out there, but just have a lot of
Right.
dreams. Like at least I could, for example, if I still worked for my old company, I'd be like, look, here's Ryan Connolly. He has done this, 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 and this. Look at his social media. Look at how many things he's made. Like you check so many boxes, and yet it's not that straightforward for you, it seems.
Yeah, no, I mean, so far, as far as the Hollywood world goes, and pitching, for studios and production companies, me doing Film Riot, or having the social media pool that I have, so far no one's cared about that, which is both like damn it and great at the same time. It's like damn it because that could be a leg up, but great because when somebody finally says yes to me, I know it won't be because I have an audience. It's because they believe in the film that we're making. But yeah, so far no one has really cared, about the fact that I own the Film Riot property and everything. I tried to include it into a few pitches, but it gets like, oh, that's cool. That's pretty much the biggest reaction it gets.
Wow. Well, offline, I think there's something that I might be able to help with there, but we'll save that for a private conversation. Um, but like, I think filmmaking today in 2022 has reached a certain point. I mean, you look at like virtual production and Unreal Engine 5, and the amount of education is available on YouTube and TikTok, and
Yeah.
like how powerful computers are now, that you can do so much more with so much less. Like, how do you feel like that plays into the current landscape of the streaming platforms, where it does kind of feel like most of the platforms now are looking to take content that they can produce and keep forever, as opposed to taking things that have already been produced, even if they're high quality, because they don't want to lose them after 3, 7 years or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know too much about that world, to be honest, as far as streamers and exactly how they're operating. Um, I do know, just based off of what I hear from my reps, what people are looking for, and yeah, they really are ramping up production in every one of those houses. But I think production in general is becoming so interesting, because of what you said, the advancements in technology. I mean, I remember, before Film Riot was even a thing and they were making Avatar, and hearing about this new technology that James Cameron was using to make the film, and Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson, all of them are going on set and their like mouths are hitting the floor on how he's doing this. And now you can literally set up what they did in your bedroom. And that's just bonkers. From looking in a very short time frame of just watching these videos of volumes and mocap suits and all this stuff, and just being like, man, that's so cool. What is it? How can I get my hands on it? And like, oh, $25,000 suit? No, that's not a thing. To now, where you can get a really solid suit for like under $3,000.
Yeah.
um it's just crazy. It's like you go even further back and you had stuff like Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, which was pretty famous for how it was made. Like one dude did like most of the VFX or something like that, or whatever. Different films like that where it's like basically one person doing almost everything, and how shocking that was. To now, it's like not that shocking. It's impressive, but it's like, yeah, I mean, you got Unreal Engine, which is free. You got DaVinci Resolve, which is free, or $200 if you want to get the pro license. The amount of assets you have to pull from, to where all you really need is time and the drive for it, time to really learn it, get proficient at it, and the drive to continue on when that becomes monotonous. Eventually you can be like this one man band to some degree, especially if you want to go more the animation route. I have a few friends that are making things that look like a whole team did it from Unreal Engine. It's just one person who's just putting in the time for it. Um, so it's pretty incredible what you can do. I mean, even if you want to go a green screen sort of route, and all you have to do is have a couple of friends who are maybe good at these things. You could take like a team of 10 and do something what feels like 100 10 years ago. So that's what I'm most curious about, is as this stuff is so much more readily available, because that's really current, right? Like everything that we have, and it being so accessible, is pretty recent, because the software and the hardware had to both get to a point to where they were accessible to everyone. We're kind of in that space now. So I'm very curious to see, in the world that we're in now, where, like you said, with YouTube, you type anything and you get a 12-minute instructional video on every button to push to do it exactly this way. And with those stuff being accessible to the hungry, young storyteller, what will things be like 10 years from now? When you're getting stuff that looks like it was made for $1 million that was made for $100 in some kid's bedroom. What will that world look like? That's what is very interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think about, like, The Mandalorian and their virtual production set with, like, everything being shot in one stage without having to go on location, and even that, like, Mandalorian is what, like, 2, 3 years old now? And we have
Yeah,
people
yeah.
starting to try to home brew that in their garages, like
Yeah. Yeah, we did a test with a projector, which I think with maybe a little more expensive projector, a little brighter, it probably would work, and probably a little bit more expensive screen. But I have a friend who actually did it with a projector, and it did work because they had a bit brighter of one after
wow.
we did an episode doing something with it. So I was like, yeah, that works. So even, car shots, an airplane shot, whatever. Um, God, there's so many things that, just when I started Film Riot to now, it is wild what you can do. Backyard filmmaking versus when we started doing the show. Like none of this stuff was possible then. Now, if you just put in the time, if we took a month on one shot, we could make a shot that rivaled what goes in, $100 million film. And that would not be possible, 10, 12 years ago, without someone incredibly skilled with a very, very expensive piece of software.
One thing I worry about is just as all of this technology and skill proliferates, like, if we think about, they always say, like, today we have seen, more content than anybody in the history of mankind. Like, we've seen so many shows and movies and TV shows and pieces of art in short form, long form. Like, we're a bit becoming desensitized in a way to certain things. Like action sequences, I find myself like, if it's not totally unique or like I feel like the danger of the situation, I kind of zone out. And that's why we have that like second screen phenomenon, right? Where we're we're kind of watching, but we're not really watching because we kind of seen it before and we're just waiting for the next, plot point to move on. And I don't know, like, is that just gonna mean we just have to like elevate our storytelling more? Or
Yeah, I think that's the good aspect of that, right? Like you get this new thing. I mean, you get the invention of film itself, moving pictures, and the stuff that they started filming was pretty mundane. Here's a train coming into the station, and people were going into like an actual, I guess, cinema room to pay a ticket and watch this thing. They used to be very short. I mean, you go back to silent film and how it was done, and then people sort of started getting bored of that, and the storytelling became more and more mature over time, more nuanced. The characters became deeper, more realistic. So there's always been this, technology comes up and everybody's sort of fascinated by the technology of it all, but then that becomes, like you say, like, oh yeah, I'm in a world where I could literally see anything on screen now, and then the storytelling has to come up to match that, because that's the real draw. And action films, for me, I totally agree, and that's actually part of every action film pitch I've done so far. Is there's a whole section where I talk about, an action scene is nothing and will hold no one's attention if it's not supported by character and story. Mostly character. If you're not 100% in it with the characters, then the action scene that's about to happen is meaningless. And it's the exact same thing, with any film that you make. If you make a horror film, why are you going to be scared if you don't care about who's in danger? If you make a romance, why are you going to care about the kiss at the end if you don't love those two and want to see them happy and together? You know what I mean? So action films for me are very much the same way. I'm fully in it when the film did its job, and the themes are there, the characters there, the story is meaningful, and you get to that action sequence and you're all into it. Otherwise it's just boring, but that's always been the case for me. But I do think, as everything becomes like, oh yeah, I've seen it, oh yeah, we could do a CG character, oh yeah, we could do it mocap that way, we could do it on an LED screen. um the draw really has to be and is the story, and always has been and currently is with anything that really has staying power or that's really going to make a ripple. Like anything that we've seen in the past 3 years that made waves, and stuck around for a bit in the general social conversation. They were all really well told stories. They weren't just cool; they were extremely well told. Like Stranger Things 4 was wildly popular, and I thought it was excellently done all throughout. It's fantasy, it's tons of visual effects and huge scale, high budget, but the characters and the story were all there to make all that work. Or Squid Games, for instance, what an amazing story that they told, and how they told it was beautifully done as well. So I think the story is going to be king always, and if that's service, then everything else will just be icing on the very delicious cake.
Is that something that Film Riot is focusing on? I feel like most of the videos is more about like production tips and like how you do things like with the equipment and stuff or like editing the stuff. But in terms of like developing the story, is that something that Film Riot is like starting to get into more or focus on?
A little. We've talked a little bit about it over the years, for sure. More over the past 5 years, we've talked about it more than we had done before, largely because I wanted to be more comfortable as a storyteller before I started telling people how I did it. So we've been also been cautious about that on Film Riot. Is in the beginning it was the opening logo has me saying, you want to be a filmmaker, so do I, let's figure it out. And that's always been the motto we carry is, we're figuring, I've said it earlier, figuring it out. And so I didn't really want to teach something, or even tell you in detail how or why I did something, until I could show you something of that. So until I had enough short films and was out pitching and getting validation of like, okay, I can start talking about this more. I got a handle on it. I didn't really want to bring it to our audience. But even then, when we do our story stuff, we did like a theory of editing. We call them like the art of film sort of episodes. When we do those, I always make sure to point out that this is my subjective viewing of this idea, because that's what art is in every aspect. It's subjective. How you light something is completely subjective. What somebody thinks is bad cinematography, somebody else liked for that scene. So it's really hard to peg down, hey, here is an objective truth on how to do this. If I turn the light switch on, it'll objectively come on. But that's about as far as you go. Everything else is a subjective experience of that, because is it a cold bulb or is it a warm bulb? And it's that this person used to do a job where it was all cold bulbs, and it reminds them of working in a cubicle and living in hell. So he's going to prefer the warm bulb, whereas she prefers the cold bulb because of her experiences. So it's all so subjective, um, that I'm also cautious about that, because when I went to film school, I went to Full Sail, which is fully a technical 1 year school. I just wanted to know where the buttons were. Back then, there was no YouTube in existence, but also, there was nothing online where I could go and do tutorials and find out about how to be a filmmaker. And I couldn't even figure out what kind of camera to get. Like, I was like, are these ENG camera the type of cameras I'm supposed to have? Or, there was just no information about anything anywhere. So going to film school or knowing somebody who did it were your two options back then. But I didn't want to go to a film school where somebody was going to teach me how to make films, how to tell a story, how to reveal character, all those things. Um, I just wanted to go somewhere that would tell me where all the buttons are, so I could figure out how to tell my own stories. Because I've always felt that way, that they're so subjective and so uniquely your own experiences, funneling out of you, that I didn't want to have these ideas put into my head that would maybe stifle what would have been me, or, whatever. And I kind of have that same idea with Film Riot too. So even if you look at our theory stuff, or our anything about story, or writing specifically, I'm very cautious about that sort of thing, of making anyone feel like, hey, here's how it's supposed to be done, here's how it should be done. Instead, it's like, hey, here's how I do it. So I don't do a ton of story episodes for that reason. I think the greatest thing that you could do is read good films and watch good films, and just make stuff and figure it out. Why did this work? Why did that work? And that, I think that's very much a part of finding your voice and who you are as a filmmaker. So I've always been very like, nervous about and cautious of bringing that too much of that to Film Riot for those reasons. And we've talked about exactly that on the show as well. We'll definitely do more story stuff, but it'll always be approached with the same caution for all the reasons I just said.
Totally. And for if anybody is watching this and not listening to it, you can clearly see the difference in how my camera looks versus how Ryan's camera looks. It's like basically night and day, but I need to get a better lighting setup, that's for sure.
I do too, to be honest. I'm just on a webcam. I really need to get like the whole at home, because I was doing all my pitching at home in 2020. I have a whole like Blackmagic with the Blackmagic Ada Mini and proper mic, so it's a much better setup there than it is here. I need to get this set up to par as much as that one.
Yeah, when people have like legit cameras as their webcam, it's like jarring. Like
Yeah, it's
this
like,
is what
damn
it's
it.
supposed to look like. Wow.
It's like, come on, man. Now I feel dumb.
There is a topic I always like asking people because I just feel like it's such a relevant thing happening right now, which is TikTok.
Mhm.
And I do feel like film talk or film on TikTok has not really found a footing yet. There are some people that I think are doing some really cool stuff, like making content, making films specifically in that format, but only a few people have really, I think, broken through and gotten like, in the hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, and the rest are just kind of, trying. And I wonder, like, what do you think about TikTok? Do you think this is like, as many people say, this is the future of content? Um, I know that Film Riot has a TikTok account and you have a decent following there, but how much of your focus is on that, not just for Film Riot, but also for you as a professional filmmaker?
Not a lot, to be honest. Definitely not as much as it should be, that's for sure. As far as what we do with Film Riot, I think TikTok, Instagram, all of those, they're all the same to me. It's just another place that we could put out stuff for people that could help them, a way to connect with people, a way to promote our stuff for sure, of course. And thinking about them each as their own unique like platform, and okay, what will work on that? Does that excite us? Do we understand it? Does it not excite us? Okay, let's just not do that then, that sort of thing. As far as filmmaking goes, I have the same opinion that I've had since, the beginning of Film Riot. As you've seen different platforms like this come and go, like Vine and stuff like that. Not saying TikTok's going anywhere. I mean, it's massive. Doesn't seem to me like it would go anywhere. But just as much as, when TV started, it wasn't the death of features. It was a whole new medium of entertainment. And I think that's what this, I don't think it's the future of filmmaking or anything like that. I think it's, a new form of content that is, added something into, what we consume, and, that's a part of the future for sure. Does it take away from those other ones and, balance maybe more heavily here than over there? Maybe so. But I think we'll always want the long form content. Even on YouTube, since we started YouTube, I feel like every year people are like, "Yep, the longer form content on YouTube's gonna die. You're gonna have to go down to doing 1 minute stuff." And so far, we still haven't. And now we're at a point where it's actually gone up. Like when we started Film Riot, it was like, yeah, 5 to 10 minutes, perfect window. Now it's like, dude, if you could hit 20, that'd actually be pretty great for the show. So it's actually gone up, not down. Um, so I think there'll always be the need for long form content, not having to be like, oh, minutes up. Now I have to find something else to watch that I want to watch. Being able to just sit down, put something on, relax, and be told a story. I just don't see that ever going away. So I don't think that TikTok is the future of filmmaking, but I do think it is another really interesting avenue for storytelling or for connecting to an audience. Not really one that jumps out at me as something to do with it, so I'm probably not the one to innovate on what that is, or maybe eventually I will have an idea for it and we'll try it. But as of now, I don't. But and that's what we say on the show all the time. It's like I don't do anything just for money and I don't do anything just for clicks, So if it's like, yeah, this would be wildly popular, I'm like, yeah, but my heart's not in it. We're just not going to do it. Because it's never ended well when we have. Uh, so right now, I don't see personally a way to really innovate on that that's meaningful or exciting to me. But I do think having those little bits of short form content is really interesting from the Film Riot side, and that's actually something that we're going to be getting into very soon. It's just those little bite size, like here's a quick 1 minute thing on how to do this, and I love stuff like that. Or even 1 to 3 minute scenes. Maybe we would do that. It's kind of just like a bridge we're still sort of like slowly walking across, and trying to figure out how to get to the other side exactly, which boards are going to break, which boards are firm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, TikTok. My personal experience with TikTok was very much like an addict. Like I,
Yeah,
I first
that's
started
the other
using
thing.
it heavily,
Yeah,
and when I was using it, I was like, "This is the future. This is like, I love this thing. Everything is like impact, impact. Like everything is, hitting straight to the core of that piece of content really fast." And then, like after using it, I think I've used it for like a year now, and I've started feeling like I do learn interesting things from TikTok, which I like, but at the same time, anything that's more creative or fictional, I don't have enough time to spend with these characters
right.
to care in like
Hmm.
any lasting capacity. And I
Yeah,
think that is the flaw of trying to do necessarily like very creative things on TikTok is you can't make anything really last because everything is just like so fast and like you move on so quickly and you don't really
yeah.
like give it time to settle in your brain or your heart.
They're essentially like all commercials, right? Like you have to be in there with your point and out as quickly as possible, just like a television commercial is. There's no room for art or nuance or fluff. It's just in, bam, here's the point of it. I'm out. And
Yeah.
which is great for like little one-off jokes or, whatever, little opinion pieces or um, anything like that. But to really tell a story, you need to live with the character for a bit and breathe the world a little bit. Um, and I just don't see that happening in 3 minutes or less.
Yeah. It's kind of like this kind of like dichotomy in a sense where like we have the proliferation of television shows and those television shows are getting longer and longer now and I,
Yeah.
I was just watching Rings of Power and like each episode is basically a movie now but in terms of length but it's moving a little bit too slow. I feel like a lot of the series now, like for example Obi-Wan, I watched that and I was like this totally could have just been a film. Like it did not need to be
Yeah.
a series at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That definitely happens. Always like that could have been like 2 episodes less.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm very thankful that we've had a time to chat. I thought everything you said was pretty much in line with what I believe in as somebody who's trying to help the independent film industry in whatever way I can. Um, is there anything that you want to shout out or like stuff you're working on or new things coming up at Film Riot that we can share with our audience that they should know about?
Uh, no, not nothing, no projects or anything that we could talk about just yet. But just at youtube.com/film riot. It's where we have all of our videos. We also have filmriot.com, where we have some extra stuff over there as well. But just chasing the stuff that we're excited about, working on some stuff in the background that we're very excited about. Um, but we're always working on stuff in the background that we're excited about. And as the film industry does, most of them fail, but eventually there'll be one that we finally get to announce because it doesn't fail, you know.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining the program. I know you're a busy guy, so we'll cut it here. Everyone, that's Ryan Connolly from Film Riot. You should know him if you don't. If you don't, shame on you. So check it out. Go on YouTube, go search him on Google, find him everywhere he is. That's Film Riot. And this was the Filmocracy podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, man.